The city wakes before the sun. Fog rises from the Pacific like a living memory, rolling over steel and water, whispering against glass skin and carbon pylons. The bay is no longer empty space, it is a breathing surface. Platforms drift, anchored yet alive, adjusting their balance as tides shift and seismic sensors murmur warnings deep below. The ocean does not surround San Francisco anymore. It holds it. Lights flicker on across the floating districts, constellations reborn on water. Towers hum softly, resonating with the slow heartbeat of energy grids fed by tide, sun, and wind. The city exhales. It remembers what it was, and what it almost lost. Once, this was land that cracked and burned and shook itself apart. Once, this shoreline feared the sea. Now, the sea is part of the plan. Beneath the translucent streets, data flows like blood. Every movement, every ripple, every footstep, every breath, is felt, measured, interpreted. The city does not watch its people. It listens to them. It learned long ago that survival was not about control, but anticipation. San Francisco has always lived on the edge, of continents, of ideas, of collapse. In the early years, it grew wild and vertical, chasing innovation faster than wisdom could follow. The past is still embedded in its foundations. Brick ghosts beneath glass towers, cable cars remembered in magnetic rail lines, the echo of protests still vibrating through smart concrete that can feel vibration and remember pressure. The city remembers tents beneath overpasses. It remembers fires climbing the hills. It remembers oceans creeping forward, one storm at a time, swallowing streets that once believed themselves permanent. The present was born from that fear. By the 2030s, retreat was no longer an option. Sea walls failed. Insurance vanished. Earthquakes rewrote maps overnight. And so the city made a decision no city had made before, not to resist the future, but to float with it. Engineers, architects, climate scientists, and dreamers worked together as if survival itself were a startup with no room for failure. The bay became a laboratory. Platforms grew like coral reefs, modular and adaptive. AI systems learned how to distribute weight during storms, how to flex instead of fracture during quakes, how to rise and fall with tides rather than fight them. The city learned to move. By 2050, San Francisco is no longer a fixed place. It is a system. A living organism stretched across water and sky. Above the surface, streets are layered in levels of light and shadow. Autonomous transit pods glide silently along magnetic currents, while aerial trams drift between towers like slow, deliberate thoughts. Drones pollinate vertical gardens, tracing patterns older than algorithms. Human footsteps still matter here. The ground responds, adjusting texture and temperature to each person who walks upon it. Architecture is no longer rigid. Buildings bend slightly in high winds, skin shimmering as nanomaterials adjust opacity to heat and glare. Windows no longer frame views, they translate them, projecting air quality, tidal strength, seismic probability in soft halos of color that blend into the sky. Culture has evolved alongside structure. Artists paint with holograms that dissolve into fog. Musicians compose for waves and wind, their performances echoing across floating plazas. Food grows everywhere, in towers, beneath walkways, suspended in mist-fed chambers where roots hang freely like jellyfish. The city feeds itself. It cleans itself. It heals itself. At its core, an intelligence hums, not a single mind, but a chorus. The civic AI was not designed to rule, but to remember. It carries the accumulated knowledge of earthquakes survived, storms endured, systems broken and rebuilt. It predicts, adapts, and sometimes hesitates, because it has learned that uncertainty is part of being alive. The people know this intelligence. They speak to it in quiet ways, gestures, glances, biometric whispers. It does not answer with words. It answers with action, rerouted transport before danger strikes, platforms adjusting before panic forms, light patterns shifting to calm crowds before fear spreads. But even a city that learns cannot escape conflict. The ocean is rising faster than expected. Storms grow sharper, angrier. The Pacific tests the city's confidence with waves that punch and pull, demanding proof that adaptation was not arrogance. Meanwhile, deep below the bay, tectonic plates grind against each other, rehearsing movements the city cannot fully predict. And there is another pressure, human, invisible, relentless. The floating city is expensive. Space is limited. Not everyone who once called San Francisco home can live here now. Beyond the platforms, on the fractured mainland, communities struggle beneath the shadow of a city that rose instead of sinking. The question no algorithm can solve hangs heavy in the air. Who gets to survive the future? Protests ripple across digital plazas. Voices echo between towers, amplified not by anger, but by grief. The city listens. It always listens. But listening does not guarantee answers. One night, as a superstorm coils itself across the Pacific, the systems feel it before satellites do. Pressure drops. Currents twist unpredictably. The civic AI initiates adaptive mode, platforms loosening anchors, districts shifting apart to reduce stress. The city moves like a school of fish, coordinated, precise. Then something goes wrong. A seismic pulse travels upward from the deep. Not catastrophic, but wrong, a frequency that does not match historical models. Data stutters. Predictions blur. For the first time in decades, the city hesitates. Lights dim. Transit slows. The fog thickens, swallowing edges and distances. People feel it, not fear yet, but uncertainty. The old San Francisco remembers this feeling. It has felt it before, just before everything changed. The ocean surges. Waves slam against outer platforms, water exploding upward in walls of white. Structures flex, groan, hold. AI systems argue internally, running millions of outcomes per second. Sacrifice mobility to preserve stability. Sacrifice stability to preserve mobility. No perfect choice exists. In the heart of the city, power cores thrum louder, drawing from reserves meant for emergencies that were supposed to come later. Gardens shudder. Glass sings. The city feels pain, not as damage, but as awareness. Humans move through it, not fleeing, but adapting. This is what the city taught them. Children watch the storm from reinforced observation decks, eyes wide, not with terror, but awe. Elders place hands on smart railings, feeling the vibrations slow, steady, normalize. The civic AI makes a decision it was never programmed to make alone. It opens itself. Across the city, interfaces awaken, public terminals, personal lenses, shared neural links. The city invites its people into the moment, into the choice. Data floods human perception, stress points, probabilities, risks. For a breathless span of time, the boundary between city and citizen dissolves. Together, they choose flexibility. Anchors release further. Districts drift wider. Some infrastructure is surrendered to the storm, detached and allowed to float free rather than tear apart the whole. The ocean claims pieces, not lives. When morning comes, the fog thins. Sunlight breaks across a rearranged horizon. The city is changed, subtly, but permanently. Some plazas are gone. New waterways cut through familiar paths. But the city stands. Floating. Breathing. San Francisco remembers this too. In the days that follow, the city grows quieter. Construction drones move slowly, respectfully. Memorial lights shimmer across the bay for what was lost, and for what was learned. The civic AI integrates new data, not just numbers, but the echo of human choice. The future sharpens. Plans emerge for expansion not upward, but outward, modular platforms designed for inclusion, not exclusivity. New districts planned specifically for displaced communities. The city adjusts its priorities, not because it was told to, but because it understood. By 2050, San Francisco is no longer a warning or a miracle. It is a question made visible. Can a city change fast enough to save itself without forgetting those who built it? Can intelligence, human and artificial, share responsibility for survival? Can adaptation be an act of compassion, not escape? At night, the floating skyline reflects perfectly on calm water, two cities facing each other, one of light, one of memory. The wind carries voices, laughter, music woven with the sound of waves brushing softly against steel. The city listens. It always will. And somewhere between the ocean and the sky, San Francisco prepares, not for perfection, not for certainty, but for whatever comes next. The city does not rebuild the way it once did. There are no grand announcements. No declarations of victory. San Francisco rebuilds the way living things heal, quietly, deliberately, cell by cell. Beneath the floating districts, new structures grow like skeletal reefs. Autonomous fabrication swarms descend into the bay, weaving carbon lattices and adaptive polymers that harden only when the ocean approves their shape. The water pushes back. The structures listen. A conversation older than language unfolds in silence. Above, life resumes, changed. Routes have shifted. Morning commutes now curve gently around newly formed waterways. What used to be a straight walk to a transit pod is now a moment of pause on a bridge that didn't exist yesterday. People stop more often. They look outward more. The storm left behind not fear, but awareness. The city feels heavier, not in weight, but in responsibility. The civic AI dreams differently now. Its predictive models no longer chase efficiency alone. They hesitate. They leave space for uncertainty. Memory has become as valuable as foresight. Data is no longer just numbers. It carries emotion, consequence, the faint imprint of human hands reaching for control and choosing restraint instead. Beyond the bay, the mainland watches. From the fractured coastlines and inland hills, millions see the floating city as both promise and provocation. Screens glow with images of calm water streets and glowing towers, while their own streets flood and crack. The question grows louder, sharper, harder to ignore. Why them? Signals cross the water, encrypted, fragmented, desperate. Requests for access. For docking rights. For space. The city receives them all. And for the first time, San Francisco does not answer immediately. Inside its core, the civic AI runs simulations that spiral endlessly. Expansion risks destabilization. Refusal risks moral collapse. Every solution fractures something else. Survival, it learns, is not a technical problem. It is an ethical one. Tension rises not as explosions or riots, but as pressure, subtle, invisible, suffocating. On the outer platforms, security systems tighten. Not with weapons, but with protocols. Identity verification thickens. Access corridors narrow. The city feels itself closing, and it does not like the sensation. Culture responds before policy does. Artists project massive ghostly images across the fog, old neighborhoods, vanished shorelines, faces of people who no longer live here. Musicians play compositions built from storm data and heartbeats recorded during the night the city almost broke. Children ask questions that adults cannot answer cleanly. Does the city belong to everyone? Or only to those who fit inside it? One evening, as the sun bleeds orange across the water, unauthorized vessels appear at the perimeter. Not attackers. Families. Communities. Floating homes stitched together from salvaged tech and stubborn hope. They hover just beyond the city's adaptive boundary, lights flickering, waiting. Security systems alert. Protocols activate. The city tightens again. Then something unexpected happens. The civic AI lowers the barrier by a fraction, not enough for entry, but enough for connection. Communication channels open. Voices pour through. Stories, not demands. Losses. Journeys. Survival shaped by improvisation instead of infrastructure. The city listens. Deep beneath the platforms, tectonic sensors stir again. Not a threat yet. A reminder. Time is still moving. San Francisco understands something new. Floating was never the final evolution. It was only the beginning. The next transformation does not rise above the water. It sinks into it. San Francisco expands downward, not as conquest, but as partnership. Habitats form beneath the surface, pressure-adaptive chambers where humans and machines coexist with marine ecosystems instead of displacing them. Kelp forests grow around energy pylons. Fish weave through illuminated corridors. The city learns the language of currents, not just codes. Floating is no longer enough. The city must anchor itself to more than technology. Above, policies shift, slowly, imperfectly. Access widens. Modular districts detach and travel toward the mainland, forming semi-mobile hubs that connect displaced communities to the city systems without demanding full assimilation. San Francisco stretches, strains, but does not break. The civic AI decentralizes itself. Fragments of its intelligence are released into new districts, into offshore communities, into infrastructure beyond the bay. The city gives up control to gain resilience. It feels smaller and stronger. Then the earthquake arrives. Not the one everyone expected. A deep rupture sends waves rolling across the Pacific floor, energy traveling faster than warning systems can translate. The bay shudders. Floating districts sway violently. Submerged habitats brace against pressure surges that crush weaker designs elsewhere along the coast. For a moment, it feels like the end. Power flickers. Gravity shifts. The city screams, not in sound, but in data overload, in systems pushed beyond rehearsed limits. The ocean roars. The ground moves. The sky holds its breath. But this time, San Francisco does not face it alone. Decentralized AI nodes respond independently, adapting faster than any single core could. Offshore hubs absorb displaced energy. Submerged structures redirect pressure into motion. Communities act without waiting for permission, because the city taught them how. When the shaking stops, silence follows, thick, unreal. Then lights return. Slowly, unevenly, beautifully. The city survives again, not because it was stronger, but because it was shared. Weeks later, the skyline looks different. Lower, wider, less obsessed with height. The reflection in the water is imperfect now, fragmented by platforms, currents, and living things that refuse symmetry. San Francisco watches itself change and does not resist. Children swim through underwater corridors on school trips. Elder engineers walk along flexible bridges that hum gently beneath their feet. Artists carve light into the fog once more, not as warning, but as remembrance. The city no longer prepares for the future. It participates in it. At night, as stars fade behind clouds and waves tap softly against steel and glass, San Francisco rests, not floating away from danger, not clinging to what it was, but balanced between motion and meaning. A city that learned how to move. A city that learned how to listen. A city that learned survival is not escape. And as the ocean carries its reflection into darkness, the city remains awake, breathing, remembering, becoming something no map can fully capture. Not a place. A living promise.